So I guess we'll start off the best place to start, which is the beginning. How did you get into DJing, and what was your first setup like?
Oh, my first setup was a tape deck with two tape players. You know, there was this double tape decks used to be. And it was really like when I was 16, 17, 18 years old, in that time when we had school parties, and there just needed to be some music on the school parties. Like we basically did them in club homes, like the tennis club home in the little city or whatever, set up a little sound system, and usually it was not really like that everyone wanted to be the DJ. It's like, I want to be the DJ. It was more like, who's going to make the music? Who's going to, like, do we have a pre-mixed tape or just a tape that runs some music? And I was always really interested in doing the music, because if someone else did the music, I was always complaining, because I always thought, like, I would play something different after that. Why don't you do this? And then at some point, I think it was like you do it. So this is how it started, and the first setup was basically not even a mixer involved. It was more like you played from one deck, and you had the possibility to rewind or forward the other tape deck to the next track, and you only had the time while the other track was running to do that, because you didn't want to interrupt the people or interrupt the vibe that you tried to create. And that is actually a really simple thing. I could say it's like pretty simple what I'm trying to do in my life, or since what I've been trying to do since then, is giving the people the chance to dance and have a good night without interruptions. Yeah, like who wants to be interrupted on the dance floor by a really bad transition, or like by weird things that are happening, like bad mixes or whatever. It just throws you off the whole journey that you want to be on, the moment that you want to have with your friends on the dance floor and just dancing. It should be just going on. I mean, it's different to a concert. If you go to a concert, then you know that the band is playing this track and then this track, and they have to rearrange themselves after each track, so you focus on the new track. But I believe if you go out to dance, it shouldn't be the DJ who's in the focus, like, I'm playing the next track now, oh, look at me now. It should be like, oh, we forget about tracks, we forget about anything. And this is what I was trying to aim for from the very beginning on. Of course, the music back then, which was kind of at the end of the 80s, was sort of pop music that I liked, you know, anything, hip-hop music. So you did play tracks, but at that time already I tried to play certain tracks after each other that sort of made sense, you know, and sort of gave it a flow. And I think that was the reason why I got into electronic music, because I understood that this is more, it was in the very beginning, electronic music was also track-based, but it was easier to like blend them together to make a whole thing out of it. And this is basically where it leads up to. Like if you look back in the last 25 years, more and more you have the possibility, especially with the machinery and with technology that you have now, to create a 5-hour-long track, you know? So there's no interruptions anymore. There's nothing that throws you off while you enjoy yourself.
Back when you first started, where did that mindset come from? Did you have DJs you were looking up to? Was it something that was a bit more intuitive?
No, I didn't. I mean, I was kind of like 15, 16 years old. I didn't even go out then. And DJing was not really, of course, when I started to go to clubs, like around, I don't know, 16, 17, 18 years old, I come from a smaller town, and we had our favorite place to go, and there were various DJ playing, and that was like the first time that you started to like ask, like, is that guy playing tonight? Because it was just resident DJs, because you knew this guy was playing like cool music, the other guy was playing sometimes a little bit stuff that you didn't like so much. So you kind of, only the people who were really interested in the music were asking who's playing tonight, but it was not even mentioned. It wasn't even like anywhere on a flyer or anything like this. So for me, it was just like a logical thing. It's like I want to. I just want to give that experience, which I want to have myself. So it didn't come from any role model or anything. It just was what I wanted to do.
And I guess your career has kind of reflected that the whole time. You're not looking left or right. You're kind of focused on what it is, your vision.
Yeah.
And, with that in mind, maybe we could talk a little bit about how it works for you right now. You've moved on from tape.
I moved on from tape at some point. I think there were early CD players, but I really didn't touch them. Then I had, in the beginning of the 90s, I had my first like sort of engagement, and you call it? No, I got hired by a club, or I got a job offer to play on a Thursday night, and there was like 2 turntables and a mixer. And I think I said that before. There was one turntable, an MK2, which Technics, and the other one was an MK1, which didn't have a pitch possibility. So this is how I started to learn to mix. Basically, I was standing there at daytime and tried to mix in records by pitching the record that was running, so the new record would fit in. But you had to try to pitch so people wouldn't really notice. And that was really like early stages mixing. I hope there's still no recording left of that time. And I remember that it took us, like the other resident DJs in that club, it took us like half a year to convince the owner to buy another turntable with a pitch, because he'd never heard of mixing, and so it was completely new. It was like, why do you need that? Yeah, it's a turntable, it works. And that was like the beginning, and then I started to get into turntables, yeah.
So yeah, and when you, I mean, we don't have your full setup here now, but when you began to think about how that setup would work, was it a trial and error thing where you added something in, okay, this isn't working, this is working, or was it, I have a vision for my setup and I'm going to see it through?
Yeah, well, I have to say I never became a turntablist. I'm not really the super wizard with like 5 turntables, syncing them all up and stuff. I tried that for a while with like 3 turntables, and it was working, but it was more because I wanted to have more sounds running into each other. So it wasn't all about the mixing for me all the time. It was working, but I always knew that the mixing actually distracts me from what I actually want to do. So, I mean, you have different DJs who focus on different things, and I admired all these DJs who were like able to play with 4 turntables and have everything mixed up and everything. But at the same time, I was thinking like, maybe their music selection could be a little bit better, you know? Maybe they should focus on that. While my music selection, from my point of view, was better, but my mixing wasn't that great. So it was still okay that you could play. But I always wished, and that happened then, I think beginning of 2000 or 2001, when a little machine came out. It was called the Psych Loop Sampler. I think it's still being sold today. And it was the very, very first piece of equipment that actually detected a certain BPM, and you could hit a button and sample like a 4-bar loop or an 8-bar loop or a 16-bar loop, and it would immediately play it back in sync. And that was for me the groundbreaking moment. It was like, bam, there I go, because now I can do transitions that last longer, that you can slowly take the one track out and slowly build a new one in, and maybe additionally add another loop of another track which you've saved before. So that was a groundbreaking thing. And that made me going a step further into like creating that whole track of a night idea.
So why was it, were you not interested in CDs? Were they just another instrument like the turntable?
I think I skipped that because a Dutch company called Final Scratch at that time made that product called Final Scratch, and I got in touch with that pretty early, like around 2003 maybe or something, 2002. Maybe it was even earlier. Sometimes I'm bad with years. And it enabled me to have records on the computer, have loads of them with me, because I felt like always a little bit limited. Also, limitation is good in a way in your music selection. I always felt a little limited with my 100 records in my record case, and I never really felt at that time the CD players weren't that good. So I never really felt like I should get into this. So then the computer possibility was suddenly there, yeah. And that gave me the opportunity to have more tracks. And they were still, of course, controlled by a turntable, by the timecode vinyl back then.
One of the things that you mentioned, button pushing, and when we first saw this, we went, hey, where's the jog wheels?
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask both of you, I guess, is this this is a statement from Native Instruments saying, you know, up until now the S4 was the flagship controller. It had 2 jog wheels, which is a kind of a nod back to classic DJing, yeah. Manual beat matching. And now this is the new flagship product, but the jog wheels are no longer there? Is that a statement that says, you know what, this is the future, we don't need to manually sync anymore, manually beat match?
It's not that much of a big statement. We thought, like our lead designer asked me one day, because I was always like, we need to have jog wheels on there, this was my opinion. He asked me one day, Eric, when you play the next time, just count how often you actually use the jog wheel and what you're doing with it. And I did it, and when I used the jog wheel, I just did this, just to adjust the drag, to adjust the phase, and probably adjust the tempo on the other hand, and then move the jog wheel. And I only touched it a few times during my set to do these little adjustments. And I've never seen a guy scratching really well on a jog wheel. I mean, we made some promo videos, and I had some people who tried it and who came out really well, but they wouldn't want to do it on a jog wheel. And so apparently it meant to us that a jog wheel is actually not really used, and people who really want to use a jog wheel, they use CDJs or they use turntables. This is why we said, okay, we make space for other stuff, and you can still plug in CDJs and turntables into this unit and use them as your jog wheel. But we thought we'd rather give people the ability to plug in a real jog wheel, which is the CDJ or the turntable, and to have space on the unit, rather than just having this little plastic thingy on there that you barely use, at least not for these purposes. And I mean, now we have this touch strip on here, and everybody's asking me, how do you phase tracks, how do you sync them up? And you just touch it here, and you move the track, and you adjust your phase, and you can even change the tempo up here, and it mechanically kind of feels the same as if you would move the pitch fader here and stop the vinyl here. So it's kind of the same movement on both sides, and so it still feels natural. And I think that's for DJing from A to B without heavy scratching, this is absolutely enough. And I think the jog wheel is mainly used for scratching these days.